Welcome back. So the citizen question battle goes on. A federal judge in New York blocking the Justice Department from switching out its lawyers' handling of a renewed effort to add the citizenship question to the 2020 census. President Trump responded to the ruling, tweeting this. So now the Obama-appointed judge on the census case, are you a citizen of the United States, won't let the Justice Department use the lawyers that it wants to use. Could this be a first? House Democrats are now preparing to schedule a vote on holding the Attorney General and the Commerce Secretary in contempt for not cooperating with subpoenas in congressional investigations looking into the origins of the citizenship question. Joining me right now is Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, these subpoenas are so ridiculous in my view. I mean, they're trying to subpoena something to say what's the origin of the question. I mean, they just want to fight the Trump administration on every turn.
There's no question that they want to fight the Trump administration on every turn. But the wording of the statute that allows the Census Bureau to add questions other than how many people live here requires the Census Bureau to give a rational basis, a reason for the question. So when the challengers and the DOJ representing the Census Bureau, the challengers to the census question, and the DOJ asked a representative from the Commerce Department, what is the rational basis? What is the reason for this? Wilbur Ross refused to give an answer and sent instead a bureaucrat unfamiliar with the president's thinking and unfamiliar with Secretary Ross's thinking. And what did the bureaucrat say? To enforce the Voting Rights Act. Well, the reason the courts don't believe this is because the Census Department has nothing to do with the Voting Rights Act. The Voting Rights Act only applies in 8 states. It doesn't apply in the other 42 states of the United States. So that is not a believable reason. That is the reason the Supreme Court ruled as it did. Fast forward a week later, the DOJ brass reads the Supreme Court opinion. The Commerce Department brass reads the Supreme Court opinion and said, we lost. The case is over. The Supreme Court has ruled. We're not going to put the question on. Start the presses rolling and print these forms. The president hears the lawyers say to the judge, Judge, we lost. The case is over. We're going to start printing the forms. The president goes, that's fake news. It was his own Justice Department saying it to a judge in Lower Manhattan. After that happened, the lawyers resigned from the case. 11 lawyers on one case in the DOJ. The top experts on administrative law and the census. They all resigned from the case. The DOJ attempted to replace them, and yesterday the judge said you can't replace them. Now, does the public really care who the lawyers are representing the federal government in a case? Yes, if the lawyers think their client is not being truthful to them, and if their client is the federal government.
But when we go back to the actual origins of this story, the question is, are you a U.S. citizen? Shouldn't that be in the census?
Well, you know, it's a long history.
I mean, really?
It was in 1950. It was then in 1960.
Well, what's the purpose of the census?
To count persons. The Constitution only allows one question. How many people reside there? Federal statute, in my view, in defiance of the Constitution, allows ancillary questions if the answers will help the government do its job.
We need to point out that the Supreme Court essentially said that the Commerce Secretary has the right to add this question, but you have to give us a legitimate reason as to why. This all falls on Wilbur Ross's shoulders, quite frankly. He fouled up. This is the holding up the soup cans incident.
You're exactly
trying to say, don't you worry your pretty little head about your soup going up because of the steel and aluminum tariff. It's a foul up on behalf of the Commerce Secretary.
What is the rational basis for it? And why don't they just articulate what the rational basis is? In one of the president's tweets, he said, OK, let's be honest. We want to know who's a citizen for reapportionment purposes. Whoa! The DOJ told 2 judges 5 times that reapportionment has nothing to do with this. So it's a major setback for the Attorney General and for the Department of Justice and for the president. In fact, it's such a setback that, in my view, the president's going to sign an executive order very soon, perhaps in 48 hours, in order to attempt to bypass the courts. I don't think that will work. I think the injunction will prevent him from enforcing it.
Just really quickly, because Carlos Gutierrez backed up what would be the Democrats' argument against putting the question on the census, that it hurts the count, that people find out they're going to be asked whether they're a citizen or not, that illegal immigrants or even immigrants might not respond. And Carlos Gutierrez seconded that yesterday. I heard that directly from a census taker when I was part of the household survey for the unemployment rate years and years ago. She said that she always argued that she told me personally, it's very hard to count what the true unemployment rate is, particularly among Latinos, because even people who were here legally won't open the door if they hear you're from the federal government.
And if the question's on it, they just won't.
Here's the
fill it
question:
out.
what does the census count? Does it count citizens? Does it count citizens and legal residents? Does it count all persons? Answer: it counts all persons, and that's the basis.
I got to switch gears. I got to switch gears and talk to you about social media, because the federal appeals court says that President Trump cannot block Twitter followers. Now, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is facing a lawsuit of the same issue. She's blocking followers all the time, and now the president can't block followers. There is a summit at the White House for social media. You've got to believe that legislation conversation is going to come up against social media. It's all sort of a whole ball of wax. But this one issue about the president not being able to block users.
Well, when the president said his social media statements are official government pronouncements, he made that a government website. And just as the government, the federal government itself, cannot discriminate on the basis of viewpoint, it doesn't like a particular follower, Twitter follower of the president, because that person criticizes him. That just as the government can't do that, the president can't do it. I don't know about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. If this is a government website, she can't discriminate. If it's a private Twitter account, she can. The president said this is not private, this is government. That forced him to keep it open to everybody.
I see what you're saying. So a social media summit at the White House this week is going to be a platform for supporters, writes the Wall Street Journal today,
right,
for the potential legislation. When I had the president on last week, a week and a half ago, he called into the show. I said, look, do you want to see competition? Would that be a better outcome in terms of leveling the playing field?
I'm going to guess he said yes.
He said you're going to have to see legislation to lead to competition.
Wow.
So it looks like legislation is coming for social media.
Legislation may come to enhance competition. Being a free market person, competition always lowers the price, and there's no price here, but improves the product. However, the decision yesterday to say you can't pick and choose who of your followers are going to be when you run a government website is based on the First Amendment. No legislation can interfere with that.
Yeah, two issues here in terms of that story and the story of legislation for social media. We know Devin Nunes is suing Twitter for shadow banning, etc. We know that the president says that he's unfairly treated on social media. Do you think we're going to see legislation?
Probably.
Yeah, I think so. Probably. That's what the president said.
Some of the big tech companies want legislation because they're going to capture. They're going to capture the regulators and make it impossible to compete.
But they're not overseen like media companies, right, Dagan?
Nope. You can't sue them for defamation. And I think that they lose that legal protection. I think that one of the first things that would happen is that they lose that legal protection.
So we are seeing a little bit of a crack in the wall with respect to Amazon. It used to be, it's another story you asked me to be prepared for this morning, you couldn't sue Amazon if the product you bought at Amazon was defective. You would have to sue the manufacturer of that product. Third Circuit Court of Appeals ruled 2 days ago you can now sue Amazon for that defective product.
Oh, all the other retailers wanted it to go that way, by the way.
Of course.
They think Amazon gets a free ride. Judge, good to see you.
Pleasure, guys.
Thanks so much. Andrew Napolitano.